Before we dive into today's intense story, a quick reminder. Over 90% of our viewers watch our videos but aren't subscribed. If you enjoy content like this, take a second to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. And if you find this story gripping, don't forget to like the video. It really helps us out.
I never imagined that I'd one day be the woman telling this kind of story. I was the quiet wife, the one who smiled politely at family gatherings, who kept a spotless home, made sure dinner was warm by 6, and folded my husband's shirts just the way he liked. For years, I lived in a world where I believed if you gave love selflessly, it would be returned. I was wrong. I met Ryan when I was 24. He wasn't the most charming man in the room, but he was stable. He had a calm demeanor, a secure job, and a way of making me feel like I could rest. After my chaotic childhood, that felt like heaven. We married after a year of dating. I moved into his modest home, planted flowers in the front yard, and turned that place into something we both could be proud of. I believed that love grew in silence, in loyalty, in the thousands of tiny gestures no one else saw. We were married for 11 years. In that time, I supported him through 2 job losses, took care of his mother when she was bedridden, and even gave up a job opportunity I had dreamed of to relocate for his promotion. He always thanked me with a soft kiss on the forehead and told me I was his rock. I didn't need much, just honesty, just faithfulness, just respect. Everything changed in year 12. It started with small things. He began working late more often, said there were new projects and tight deadlines. I didn't question it. I trusted him. Then he became distracted at home, distant. I assumed he was stressed. I planned a weekend getaway for us, something simple just to reconnect. He told me he couldn't go because of a conference. I believed him, but the distance grew. One night, he left his phone on the table and went into the garage. It lit up several times. Normally, I'd never touch it, but something had been gnawing at me for weeks. I picked it up. There were messages from someone named Mia. They weren't explicit, but they didn't have to be. The tone was too familiar, too flirtatious. Last night was fun. Can't stop thinking about you. My heart stopped. I scrolled. Photos. Nothing too revealing, but enough to know. Enough to shake my world. I felt cold. Not angry yet, just hollow. I put the phone down before he returned and sat quietly, listening to the sound of him putting away tools, humming like everything was normal. That night, I stared at the ceiling for hours while he slept peacefully next to me. The next morning, I didn't confront him, not because I was afraid, but because I needed time. Time to think, to plan, to stop myself from reacting and instead learn to respond. Over the next 2 weeks, I became an actress, smiling, cooking, asking about his day. He never suspected a thing. He still texted Mia. I began taking photos of every message when he wasn't looking. I backed up his call logs. I didn't want revenge yet. I just wanted the truth. All of it. I started looking at the woman, Mia. Her Instagram was private, but her profile picture showed her in a tight black dress, the kind I hadn't worn in years. Her bio said she was 29. She worked in real estate. That gave me a start. I checked Ryan's emails. There it was. A recent receipt for a real estate consultation. He had told me it was a work expense. He'd met her for lunch, for consultations, for property scouting. I realized they had been seeing each other for at least 6 months. I cried in the bathroom with the door locked. I screamed into a towel so he wouldn't hear. Then I wiped my face and made him dinner. That weekend, I followed him. He said he was going golfing with a client. I waited 15 minutes, then got into my car and tailed him. He wasn't careful. He wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. He drove to a small cafe on the edge of town and parked. Mia was already waiting inside. I sat in my car and watched them hold hands across the table. That image was burned into my memory. His eyes lit up for her the way they hadn't for me in years. I felt like an outsider watching a movie. I felt like a fool. When he came home that night, he kissed me on the cheek and told me he was tired. I smiled and nodded, But something inside me snapped that day. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to fight for scraps. I was going to destroy his illusion of control, not with violence, not with screams, but with strategy. Quiet, thorough strategy. I began gathering more. I accessed our joint bank account records. I made notes of every transaction he made that looked suspicious. Flowers, dinners, hotel charges. I printed everything. I contacted a lawyer, a discreet one. I told her I wasn't filing for divorce yet, but I needed to understand my rights. She explained everything. Then I made my move. I told Ryan I wanted to take a short trip to visit my sister. He barely looked up from his laptop and mumbled something like, "Sure, sounds good." I packed a small bag, kissed him goodbye, and drove away. But I didn't go to my sister's. I went to a hotel 2 blocks from our house. I stayed there for 3 days, monitoring the house from my car, watching him bring her into my home. She wore one of my scarves. I saw it from the window. She drank from my favorite wine glasses. She walked barefoot in my kitchen. But it was perfect. I took pictures, videos. I returned home that Sunday evening. He was sitting on the couch, relaxed. I walked in and smiled like nothing had happened. He didn't even ask me how my trip was. I made him dinner. I cleaned the kitchen. I tucked myself into bed beside him, my heart calm, because I had a plan. You see, when you've been lied to, something inside you shatters. But if you're smart, you collect the shards, and you build something far stronger. I wasn't going to let my life be defined by his betrayal. I was going to rise from it, but I wasn't done yet. Revenge, true revenge, is never rushed, and mine had just begun. The night I returned from my trip, something in me had changed. He didn't see it. He was too busy living in the comfort of his lies. But I had shifted. I wasn't just his wife anymore. I was his audience, his observer, and soon, his undoing. Over the next few weeks, I kept up appearances. I played the role perfectly, still cooked dinner, still did his laundry, still asked about his day. And all the while, I built my case. Every lie he told me was a gift. Every text he sent, a piece of evidence. Every time he smiled at me while his phone buzzed in his pocket, I took mental notes. I'd already met with the lawyer once. Now I went back for a second meeting, this time with a folder full of documents, screenshots, transaction records, time-stamped photos and videos. The lawyer looked over the file and raised her eyebrows. "You're building a bomb," she said. I smiled. "That's the idea." She told me I had a strong case. If I wanted to file for divorce with fault, I could, but I wasn't ready to go public yet. I wanted the fallout to happen on my terms. I wanted to dismantle the double life he'd built so carefully, brick by brick, until he had nothing left to stand on. The first step was social. I began creating a private backup account under a different name. I followed Mia's business page, learned her habits, the way she marketed herself, the events she attended, the influencers she interacted with. She was all image. Glossy pictures, fake smiles, constant self-promotion. Ryan had fallen for a fantasy. That gave me an idea. I booked an appointment with a professional image consultant and a photographer. Not for him, for me. I had spent years hiding behind comfortable sweaters, makeup-free days, and ponytails because I was busy being reliable. Now I wanted to remember who I was before I became someone's wife. I didn't want to compete with Mia. I just wanted to become visible again, first to myself. I started going out. Nothing wild, just a few art shows, dinners with old friends, a weekend volunteering at a community fundraiser. I noticed Ryan watching me more closely. He didn't like not knowing where I was. I could see his confusion grow every time I left the house without asking permission or giving a full itinerary. It was subtle, but I saw the cracks start to show. Then came the test. One evening, I got dressed for an event and put on a dress I hadn't worn in years. It wasn't revealing, it was elegant. When I walked into the living room, he looked up from his phone and actually stared. "Where are you going?" he asked. "Out," I replied calmly. "With who?" "Just some friends." He hesitated. "You didn't say anything earlier." I didn't think I needed to. I watched his expression carefully. Jealousy, suspicion, maybe even a flicker of guilt. But he said nothing more. I went out. I smiled. I laughed. I took photos with people I hadn't seen in years. I lived, not as a bitter wife, but as a woman reclaiming her space. But this wasn't just for me. It was part of a larger plan. You see, Ryan had always been concerned with his reputation. Image mattered to him more than love ever did. He was on the board of a local charity group and often bragged about his standing in the community. He needed to be seen as the good husband, the responsible one, the man with a perfect home. So I started planting seeds. I began hinting things in casual conversations with his friends' wives. Nothing direct, just soft suggestions. He's been distant lately, I'd say. Working so much I hardly see him. I'd lower my eyes, look a little sad, and change the subject. It didn't take long. Whispers travel fast. People started noticing things on their own. The late-night meetings, the missed events, the way he checked his phone obsessively. I didn't have to accuse him. I just let the silence speak. Then came the financial part. I opened a new bank account in my name only and began quietly shifting funds, just small amounts every week. I also stopped depositing my paycheck into our joint account. I changed the beneficiary on my life insurance. I updated my will. I also met with a private investigator, not because I needed more proof of the affair, I had plenty, but I wanted to know how deep the deception ran. What I learned made my stomach churn. Ryan had taken money from our savings and used it to pay for a weekend trip with Mia. He had told me it was for a work retreat. He had bought her jewelry. He had given her a second phone. He was more invested in his lie than I thought. But so was I. I knew confrontation wasn't enough. I didn't want an argument. I wanted consequences. Real, lasting ones. So I waited for the perfect moment, and it came sooner than I expected. Our anniversary was approaching. Every year I made a special dinner and we exchanged simple gifts. That year he seemed anxious. I assumed he had forgotten. But 3 days before our anniversary, I overheard him on the phone. He was planning a weekend trip with her. He had told me he was going to a corporate seminar. That was my final spark. The night before he was supposed to leave, I cooked dinner, lit candles, even wore a soft smile. He sat at the table, distracted, checking his phone. "I'll be out of town this weekend," he said without looking up. "Company workshop." I nodded. "Of course." Then I handed him a small wrapped box. He looked surprised. "You got me something." "It's our anniversary." "Of course." He opened it. Inside was a single flash drive. He looked confused. "What's this?" "Just something I put together. Memories, videos, screenshots, bank statements, messages, hotel bookings, flight confirmations, the whole story." He froze. His face drained of color. "You're not going to that seminar," I said quietly. "You're going to pack your bags and leave this house. Tonight." He opened his mouth to speak, but I held up my hand. "I know everything. I've known for months. I gave you time. I gave you opportunities. And you made your choice." He tried to deny it at first. Then he tried to cry. Then he got angry. Accused me of spying, of sabotaging him. I didn't flinch. "This isn't sabotage," I said. "It's survival." I handed him a folder. Inside were copies of everything I'd collected. Legal documents, proof of infidelity, asset divisions, even a pre-filed court petition. His lawyer would be contacted in the morning. He stood there stunned. "I built this life with you," I whispered, "and you thought you could burn it down without consequence. But I rebuilt myself, quietly, patiently, and now I'm done." That night he left, and for the first time in years I slept with peace. But my story wasn't over yet. Revenge, you see, doesn't always end with someone walking away. Sometimes it ends with them realizing they've lost everything they once took for granted, and that part was still coming. After he walked out that night with nothing but a duffel bag and his phone, silence settled over the house like dust. I stood in the doorway for a long time, looking at the space he'd once filled, and I didn't feel heartbreak. I didn't feel hatred. I felt done. The next morning, I followed through with everything. I called his lawyer. I filed the petition. I handed my lawyer all the documentation I'd collected over months. There was no shouting, no dramatic courtroom scene, just facts. Cold, hard, undeniable facts. He tried to stall at first, sending apologetic messages, offering to work things out. He even tried the pity card. I made a mistake, he said. She meant nothing. But he never once said the one thing that mattered. I'm sorry for what I did to you. Because that would have required genuine remorse. And Ryan didn't feel guilt. He felt inconvenience. The divorce process was clean, quick. My lawyer was thorough, and because of the evidence I had gathered, I got the house, a fair share of the savings, and most importantly, peace. He lost face in the community. He stepped down from the charity board before they could remove him. Word got out. Not from me, but from whispers and the facts I left behind. Mia? She was never really invested in him. As soon as the glamour faded and the consequences started piling up, she disappeared, blocked him, moved on. He had risked everything for her and ended up with nothing. Not even a proper goodbye. Weeks passed, then months. I thought maybe that would be the end of it. But one rainy afternoon I saw him again. He showed up at the grocery store looking tired and older than I remembered. He approached me near the produce aisle, unsure, hesitant. "Hey," he said. I looked up. "Hi." There was a long pause. He shifted awkwardly, eyes searching my face like he was hoping to see a trace of the old me, the one who used to wait for him at the door, the one who used to believe his every word. "I didn't think I'd see you here," he said. "I shop here every week," I replied. He nodded, then looked down. "You look different." "I feel different." He tried to smile. "Listen, I just wanted to say I've had time to think about everything. I miss you." I looked at him for a moment. This man who once occupied every corner of my life, who knew the rhythm of my heartbeat, who now stood in front of me like a stranger. "I hope you find what you're looking for," I said gently, and I walked away. Because I wasn't angry anymore. Revenge, as I had learned, isn't always fire and fury. Sometimes it's just becoming the version of yourself that they never thought you'd be strong enough to be. I started over. I renovated the house. I repainted the living room walls that once echoed with silence. I donated the old furniture we picked out together and bought things that reflected who I was now. Bold colors, cozy spaces, things that made me feel alive again. I reconnected with people I had lost touch with during the marriage, old friends, family members. I built a circle of support, not out of bitterness, but out of renewal. And slowly, I began to rebuild something even more important, trust in myself. There were hard days, of course, moments when memories would sneak in, times I'd question if I could have done more. But healing is not forgetting. It's choosing to move forward anyway. I traveled. I started a blog, anonymous at first, where I shared my story with other women going through similar betrayals. I received hundreds of messages, strangers telling me that my quiet strength helped them find their voice. That felt like justice in its own way. And one evening, a year after the divorce, I sat on the porch watching the sunset. A warm cup of tea in my hands. The wind was soft. The world was still. I wasn't someone's wife anymore. I wasn't someone's backup plan. I was me, and I was whole. Ryan once thought he could betray me and walk away untouched. He thought I'd shatter and beg and crumble into the background like I never existed. But I didn't break. I evolved. That was the real revenge. Not in what I took from him, but in everything he lost when he let me go. Because one day, long after the lies faded and the excitement turned to regret, he'd realized that the most faithful, loyal, quietly powerful woman he ever had was the one he gave away, and by then I'd be long gone, free, unbothered, and finally, truly alive.